Police was, again, a gunman attacked our guys while they were at practice and shooting up the place.
Yeah, I reported that.
I just don't understand this anymore. I really don't understand. The greatest nation in the world right now has succumbed to being a third world country. The level of discourse that takes place has got to stop. It has got to stop, and we've got to return to who we are. We are a great, great nation, and we say in all our prayers, under God, under God, under God. Well, I'm sure that right now, people of faith, tomorrow on Sunday morning, please go to wherever it is, drop to your knees tonight and pray for America. Pray for President Trump, that he's going to be okay. We also have, as I said, one man was shot. This guy was just there celebrating a day at the farm showgrounds, and all of a sudden, somebody takes into their hands, they have to start shooting up the crowd, shoot the president in the head. It's absolutely, it's off the charts, third world country now. We have to start rallying around about who we are. When 1.5 million men in uniform and women in uniform have died to give us the right to practice the form of government we have, for us to be so casual and so callous about it? No. It's time for America to get back to being America.
And Congressman, you were there with your grandchildren. I didn't get the ages of it. With the young children?
Yeah. I mean, so we had children there anywhere from 4 years old up to 12 years old. Let's see, about 10 of them. My wife was there. My sister-in-law was there with her grandchildren. One of my sons was with me. And you have to wonder, as the children came back, they're just, Grandpa, why would somebody do that? Grandpa, why did somebody do that? They don't like President Trump. Just don't vote for him. And I've said, kids, I'll tell you what. That's why Grandpa is in Congress. We have got to go. We have got to get this country back on the beam. We cannot allow this to continue to unravel. Lester, I mean, really, we're like a third world country right now, right? I mean, this is absolutely off the charts. Evil. It can't exist. We can't allow it to exist, and we can't tolerate it. We can't say, well, that's going to happen from time to time. No, it's not. 1.5 million men and women in uniform to give us the right to vote and do the things we do, for it to be this way now?
Obviously, a shocking and terrible evening as we hear the former president is okay, but as we've noted that one person was killed, 2 others have been badly injured in this. Congressman, thank you for taking a few minutes. We're glad you and the kids you're with are safe. I want to go to Garrett Hake now. He covers former President Trump. Garrett, Donald Trump has posted tonight on Truth Social. Talk through us what he wrote.
That's right, Lester. The former president using his preferred medium to inform the world of his status and the fact that he's okay. His message really in 3 parts. First, thanking law enforcement and the Secret Service for their swift action in Butler after the shooting. Second, offering his condolences for the person in the crowd, presumably a Trump supporter, who was killed and the other person seriously injured, about whom we don't have any additional update now. And then describing his experience with what he says was being shot through the skin of his right ear, saying that he knew immediately that it was a bullet. He felt the bullet ripping through skin. He says much bleeding took place, and he realized what had happened. He concludes, God bless America. We don't know yet, Lester, if this will be the only communication we get from the former president tonight. He is, of course, scheduled to go to Milwaukee and be seen there on Monday for the start of the Republican National Convention. But obviously, not just a personal crisis for him, a sort of crisis for the country with this moment of apparent political violence with an apparent assassination attempt, but also a crisis for his campaign that will now have to figure out what exact steps they'll need to take, both to make sure he remains safe today, tomorrow, and going forward, particularly with the convention where tens of thousands of people are expected to attend over the 4-day event. And what, if anything, they want to make of this moment politically. The former president said in his Truth Social post that nothing is known yet about the shooter. He makes no comment about that. His supporters, though, are using images like the ones we're seeing on the screen, including now both of his sons, pinning those images to their X accounts, the website formerly known as Twitter, pointing out the idea that their father, the Republican nominee in waiting, if you will, is a fighter and kind of seizing on this moment to elevate him politically. And so we have the physical update here from the former president. Again, he claims that he was shot through the upper part of his right ear. By all accounts, will be just fine. The political reverberations, of course, entirely unpredictable at this moment, but already going on behind the Trump campaign, as we've reported earlier in the evening, putting their staffers on lockdown, telling people not to talk to the press, not to talk at all while they figure out the steps at a more senior level they want to take going forward. And Lester, I'll just add, as I mentioned earlier in our broadcast tonight, that concerns about the former president's safety on the campaign trail have always been on the front burner at the senior level of the Trump campaign. The mega rallies that he likes to hold with tens of thousands of people in open areas, concerns about how to continue to conduct those safely in kind of a hot political environment, in an environment where he just might not be safe. There was much talk about those events, and even the smaller events where he likes to drop by at fast food restaurants or firehouses, the kind of unscheduled stops that presidential candidates like to make. At every single one of these stops that are discussed, there are serious high-level discussions about whether they can be conducted safely. It'll be borne out in the reporting to come what kind of conversations were had about this rally and how, if at all, Donald Trump will change his posture towards these rallies that have become such a hallmark of his over his political career.
I was going to ask you about that because this is a part of his certainly his political identity. He loves these type of moments and these rallies. So it would be hard to imagine his campaign without that. But I guess that is one of the many. Yeah, go ahead.
We did see, Lester, earlier this year, his campaign made a tactical decision in Iowa and New Hampshire when they realized that these giant rallies were pulling in so many people from states that weren't relevant. You know, if you held an event in Iowa for 10,000 people and 6,000 of them drove over from Illinois, it wasn't helping you in the caucus. So they made tactical decisions along the way to shrink events for that purpose. Obviously, in a general election, when you're talking about 70, 80 million voters across the country, but mostly focused on battleground states, it doesn't seem outside of reason that they might find smaller events that look just as good on television might be safer, easier, certainly cheaper going forward. But again, I think these are all conversations that are going to be had down the line with a president, as you note, who very much likes to have these events, to talk about the crowd size, and to make that part of the sort of his idea of projecting strength as a candidate.
All right, Garrett Haake, thanks. We'll ask you to stand by as I bring in our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson. Hallie, we have been hearing from members of the Trump family tonight. In fact, Garrett mentioned some of them. Obviously, I guess they are the lone conduits. The campaign itself is being very quiet right now.
Yeah, they are. And they have taken on the position now of sort of communicating to the American people, as their father has now done in that Truth Social, that online post that Garrett just referenced, how their dad is doing. Donald Trump Jr. is saying that his father is in good spirits, that he has spoken with him. I have heard from somebody else who has spoken with the former president, very close with him, who describes him as very tough. And so we know that the former president was shot in the ear based on, of course, that post. His daughter, Ivanka Trump, also releasing a post saying that she loves her father, condemning political violence, as so many on either side of the aisle have done tonight now over the course of the last 3 hours or so. I was struck listening to your conversation there with Congressman Kelly, Lester, who knows Butler very well. That's his hometown. He was raised there. The place where this rally was held, this is, to use a cliche, Lester, it was Trump country. I mean, this is a place that skews heavily Republican, where Republicans outnumber Democrats 2-1, where Donald Trump handily won back in 2020. Is a place where he would, of course, be focusing on this upcoming election. It was a notable location for his rally just 2 days now before the convention was supposed to begin, because it was the last rally before Milwaukee. There was some question 4 hours ago as to whether or not the former president might actually roll out his vice presidential pick there. That had been where so much of the focus and the conversation politically was for Donald Trump and for his campaign in the moments, of course, before this horrific shooting happened, this horrific attack. Now, obviously, the conversation has changed. And I can tell you, based on some of the reporting from our team here at NBC News, a source familiar with planning for the convention says this changes everything. That is reflected by some of the conversations that I've had as well. Sort of people are going, how could this go on as normal? So I think there is a real question mark as to the days ahead. But I think probably the most urgent one, and the question that we are working on too, is just physically, where does Mr. Trump go from here? Will we hear, for example, from any of the doctors who treated him? Will we perhaps see him publicly, maybe tonight, maybe early tomorrow morning? Will he want to make an appearance like that to come out and reassure the American people that he is, in fact, okay, that he is, in fact, in good spirits, Lester? And so I think there is obviously reported out both politically and from a law enforcement perspective, as you see the former president there.
Hallie, thank you. Let me go to Kristen Welker in our Washington, D.C. We're hearing from members of the President Biden's cabinet in reaction to this apparent assassination attempt.
Lester, we are. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, posting, "I am shocked and saddened by the shooting of former President Trump's rally and grateful that he is safe," reiterating what the president said tonight, that there is absolutely no place for political violence in America. We must all condemn it. We're also hearing from the Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, who says the entire Department of Defense condemns this violence, which has absolutely no place in our democracy. I think you're going to hear that term reiterated a number of times. Austin goes on to say, "This is not the way we resolve our differences in America, and it must never be. I am relieved that reports indicate former President Trump is safe, and I am praying for him and his family and everyone affected by this appalling incident." So incredibly strong language coming from the Biden administration, bolstering what we heard from President Biden tonight, condemning this violence in the strongest terms possible. And Lester, again, this is a moment where people on both sides of the aisle are coming together to condemn this, to say that we cannot tolerate this as a country and that, quite frankly, something has to change. It is worth noting that Congress has a role to play here. Obviously, federal authorities are going to lead the investigation into exactly what happened, how this could have happened at a Trump rally. But Congress also wanting to get to the bottom of how this unfolded. The chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, writing in a statement, "I've already contacted the Secret Service for a briefing and am also calling on the Secret Service director to appear for a hearing." So, Lester, again, this is just the beginning of the process of starting to understand, starting to get to the bottom of exactly what happened and how this country will prevent this from happening again, both from a security standpoint, Lester, but also in terms of how our politics is conducted, the political rhetoric that is used in this country, and the tone with which this campaign is being waged.
And
Lester?
I think it's fair to say that there will be a desire to at least frame what occurred here tonight, and so to find out more about this shooter will certainly probably direct many of the conversations we'll have in the coming days. I want to go back to Tom Winter now, our investigative correspondent. Tom, what more have you learned? Tom, you there?
Yeah. Hey, Lester. Sorry, we've just been on the phone, as you can imagine.
No worries.
I've got a couple of phones all working at once. We can say that the shooter has been identified to us by 4 senior law enforcement officials as a male. And I think shortly, we're just in the process of going through the last bit of verification. I kind of alluded to this when we were speaking moments ago. We're going to be able to show you video of where or a still image of where this individual was. And it's coming into a little bit more clarity at this point. Obviously, they were using some sort of a high-powered rifle. As you know, a handgun would not be able to fire with the accuracy and velocity from the distance this individual would have been at. What type of weapon that is specifically, I've heard a lot of different things floating around and things competitively. It's just my experience that it's too soon to really get a handle on that level of granular detail. We do not have yet a name. As I mentioned to you the last time we spoke, there are a number of names on social media that do not appear to be the individual that's involved in this. And we're needing to get some clarification on that. So right now, here's the state of the investigation at 9:40 Eastern time. Law enforcement believes that they have a single alleged shooter who is now deceased. that individual, that name that they have, is being kept very close to this investigation. They are in the process of trying to get any other information about this person's motives, their background, that they can get, and then to be able to figure out where this investigation goes. Of course, they want to rule out whether or not this individual had any help. They want to rule out what may have led up to this. And of course, long term, Lester, there'll be an analysis of the security plan for this site. The security plan going forward for the former president will undoubtedly change radically, I'm sure effective immediately. And so that will be a big change at various rally sites. And then there'll be a look into, was there anything about this individual that could have been anybody know if they had any sort of knowledge of this in advance. So those are all the things that are happening literally as we speak. We do know that the FBI was requested by the U.S. Secret Service to investigate this, and that call was obviously taken, and the FBI is very much involved along with the local U.S. Attorney's Office. And they will go through and get the necessary warrants for the property of this individual and anybody known to them. And the question is, obviously, where did things come from and when, and was this person picked up in the moments beforehand? We're a little bit more cautious in this day and age, not that we never were, but we're a little more cautious in this day and age with deep fake videos, with AI generated videos and images that we really try to do to the best of our human ability, an exhaustive effort to make sure that things that are floating around online or are sent to us are in fact accurate and are not some sort of machine generated image. The images you are looking at are most certainly not. And it should be pointed out that there's a number of photographers that are part of the press pool who took these photographs, and as well as the video that we've seen, and that those individuals obviously were potentially in harm's way as well, but not as much obviously as the Secret Service agents who rushed to surround the former president and make sure that if there were any other shots that were fired, that it would hit those Secret Service agents and not Trump.
All right, Tom, thanks for that update. When you are able to show us those images you mentioned earlier, just let us know and we'll go back to you. But I want to go to Milwaukee right now, where for the Republican National Convention this coming week, Vaughn Hilliard is there. And Vaughn, I understand a word from the RNC about going forward.
Right, Lester. A great many of the delegates are already here in Milwaukee. Of course, the expectation was that elected officials, of course, the former president and presumptive Republican nominee himself would be making their way to town here in Milwaukee for the week-long convention. The new statement here from the RNC, I want to read it directly to you. Quote, as was communicated earlier this evening, President Trump is doing well and grateful to law enforcement and first responders for their fast action. President Trump looks forward to joining you all in Milwaukee as we proceed with our convention to nominate to serve as the 47th President of the United States. As our party's nominee, President Trump will continue to share his vision to make America great again. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump for President 2024, Senior Advisors Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. Lester, I just talked to two of the delegates here at the convention that are already in town. Reince Priebus, who folks will recall was the former RNC chairman. He is playing host here in his hometown of Milwaukee for this convention. There is a reception this evening for the delegates, the thousands of delegates coming here to Wisconsin. That reception this evening has been canceled. There are formal meetings for the Republican convention ahead of the formal festivities during the week. Those are still on tap to take place tomorrow before Monday night's primetime addresses begin. Of course, Donald Trump himself is slated to take the stage here at this arena on Thursday night. His vice presidential running mate is slated to take the stage on Wednesday night. Of course, we do not know who this individual is at that time. One of the delegates I talked to here this evening, Lester, told me that he expects the energy to only increase with today's events and the apparent assassination attempt of the presumptive Republican nominee with less than 120 days until the general election. That delegate suggesting to me that the TV ratings for that Thursday night primetime speech that will happen 10, 11 p.m. Eastern time will be high. For this Republican Party, Lester, Donald Trump was somebody who ran through the Republican primary process and handily won to get to this point here. He has had these rallies around the country 9 years running now. And here today in Pennsylvania, less than 48 hours before we expected him to arrive alongside his wife Melania and his sons Eric and Don Jr., as well as a daughter Ivanka, and expected Barron as well. Before the family were to arrive here less than 48 hours, this convention will move forward, we're told, though, in its anticipated events as they were previously planned. Lester.
All right, Vaughn, thanks very much. I want to continue that part of the conversation with Kristen Welker, moderator of Meet the Press. She's in Washington. Kristen, you've got thousands of delegates, as Vaughn mentioned, heading to the RNC the next 24 hours. It's obviously going to be a massive security operation. And as someone had pointed out, it's going to be of an intense interest.
Well, Lester, you're absolutely right about that. And look, security had been front and center prior to this shooting at the Trump rally in Pennsylvania. And so now undoubtedly they will reassess. We would not be surprised to learn that they will bolster security in various areas. But again, thousands of people descending upon Milwaukee, not just Republicans, Democrats as well, to deliver the counterpoint to the speeches that we're all going to be tracking every night. And then, of course, the media, the journalists will be there. So this will be a city that will be bustling, that will be brimming. So undoubtedly, the security, again, Lester, is going to just be critical. We have talked so much about perimeters this evening. We know that both the Republican National Convention as well as the Democratic National Convention, which gets underway in August, that the planners for those events have spent a lot of time focused on the perimeters, making sure that they are as strong, as secure as possible, that it is as difficult as possible to access the area where the speakers will be, where the delegates will be. And so again, Lester, this is a moment for a reset. Undoubtedly, when those who are planning the Republican National Convention, the security detail for that event will take a step back and reassess everything that they have just planned. Lester, all of this comes as we're getting a statement from the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, about the shooting tonight. The first time we are hearing from him, he says, I have been briefed on the shooting at former President Trump's rally and have briefed the president. The FBI, ATF, U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Pennsylvania, and the Department's National Security Division are currently working with the Secret Service as well as state and local law enforcement partners on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania. My heart is with the former president, those injured, and the family of the spectator killed in this horrific attack. We will not tolerate violence of any kind, and violence like this is an attack on our democracy. The Justice Department will bring every available resource to bear to this investigation. So there again, you have the Attorney General echoing what we have heard members of his cabinet, from the vice president, who has also put out a statement this evening to condemn the violence, condemning this violence in the strongest terms possible. We have, of course, Vaughn was just talking about the fact that this day started with journalists, people who are interested in politics, wondering if this would be the day that former President Trump would announce his pick for the VP nomination. And of course, this was not the day. This turned into a very different day. But all of those who are a part of that process have weighed in as well to condemn this violence in the strongest terms possible. And again, Lester, this is one of those moments where, to some extent, for a brief moment, the politics gets put aside. President Biden halting his campaign ads. The Trump campaign went into a virtual lockdown until former President Trump put that statement out. But again, everyone still responding and reacting to the horrific events that unfolded in Pennsylvania.
Some things
today
are bigger than politics, and certainly the life and death nature of what we have witnessed today. Our thoughts, obviously, with the family of the deceased victim, the other two that are injured. On this horrific day. We want to bring in Evie Poumpouras, again, a former Secret Service agent. If I can continue the conversation we were having with Kristen with you regarding strengthening the security, potentially strengthening the security at the Republican National Committee, I would think there's only so much you can do, considering it was already a high threat environment. What sort of options will the Secret Service have to spread its footprint?
Well, here's the thing. They're going to do more and a lot more. So there is a lot more that can be done. For one, it's not just the U.S. Secret Service that's got the manpower. The majority of the manpower doesn't come from the Secret Service. The majority of the manpower comes from the local police department, the men and women that work locally and for the state. So you're going to see an upscale of the state and the local police entities coming in to secure the RNC. That's where the upscale is going to take place, because they too don't want anything happening on their watch, on their ground. The U.S. Secret Service and all, it's maybe a couple dozen agents. It's not a big agency. Yes, are they elite? Are they tactically trained? Absolutely. But in the end, they work together and in harmony with all the local entities. The local departments, the local police, the state police, they're the one who come in with the manpower. And that's what you're going to see. You're probably also going to see a lot of uniforms. And why am I saying this? When you do a security venue, you design your security plan around a lot of different things. One of the things you think about is uniforms. How many uniforms do I want? I want a lot of uniforms. Do you know why? Something as simple as seeing men and women in police uniforms is a massive deterrent. So you're going to see this huge footprint. Now, this is also important because when you have an incident like this, now you have to worry, Lester, about copycats. We don't typically see these incidents, right? Last one we saw really was Reagan. These happened very over decades. We've just had one. So now everybody's concern is somebody else going to get the idea that they can do this? Because what's happened is somebody did this. Another person who has an unhealthy or special interest in one of these protectees is going to say, this guy did it, or gal, we don't know. I think I can do it too. And so now we have to worry about copycats, other people who are going to think that they can do this. So you've got this concern. Now, going back to the investigative arm of it, you're going to look at, well, the FBI is really going to be the investigative entity here. And this is why some people would presume the Secret Service would be. They are not. By design, FBI comes in. This is kind of a checks and balances system, because let's say, and we're not saying any of this is true, but the Secret Service can't investigate itself. The FBI is going to look at how did this happen? Did all the security measures go into place correctly? If there was a special interest, if there were people of interest that the Secret Service was looking at, did they vet all these people correctly? So you want an outside entity like the FBI to come in to do investigation. It's a checks and balances system. Now, also in the Secret Service, there's a protective intelligence arm. What does that mean? These are the men and women that look at the threats that come in. As you can imagine, protectees, presidents, former presidents, all sorts of, there are a lot of threats that come in. And one of the issues is, what should we pay attention to and what is not? And it can be a really difficult thing to determine. What do I follow up on? What do I think is minimal or not as important? So they're going to go back and they're going to look. This individual, were they of any interest? Were there any indicators of this specific person? Had they made any comments? Hosts, what was going on? And had they ever come into the radar or realm of the U.S. Secret Service or any other local police entity? And if so, what happened? Did they interview this person? Did they decide that the person was not of any interest? That's going to come into play. And even when it comes to protective intelligence, they classify people. Now, I can't get into the nuances for, classified reasons, but there's a way to classify folks, whether somebody is considered a really high threat. You know what? This person is super dangerous. You have to be careful. We want police involved. Maybe if there's a mental health issue, because it does happen. A lot of the threats that do come in tend to be tied to mental health issues, unusual or unhealthy interests in the people that the Secret Service protects.
Let me ask you, how big a chill do you think this has cast over people who do what you do, people who, work in the Secret Service and run these security operations, to see one of their protectees being taken to a vehicle bloodied? How does that affect the people that do this?
A big deal. It's a massive big deal. I mean, as I'm sitting here, I've been on standby with you guys. My phone's blowing up. All the former agents or people I know, can you believe this happened? Can you believe this? This is not a small thing. It really isn't. I know we're breaking it down play by play, but from the protective realm, This stuff does not happen. It doesn't happen, and that's a good thing. You know why? Because security plans are put into place so you can minimize this stuff. But I have to say, you can only control so many things. These open rallies, they are really difficult. And I wonder if moving forward, we're going to see less and less of these. You know, Lester, in your time when you did your reporting, and you know, when Kristen was talking before, I actually worked alongside Kristen when I was still in the Secret Service and she was in the press pool. You will see often Secret Service and staff kind of almost negotiating. Well, we don't want to do this. Well, we want to do that. And it's this back and forth. And you can see now a little bit of a reality check, or as Kristen was saying, a reset, where staff and White House officials who tend to think sometimes from a security standpoint, and I would hear too, come on, that's too much, it's not going to happen. You're going to see them now pull back and acquiesce a little bit more and listen and not fight back as much when the Secret Service says, hey, this isn't a great idea.
Does the Secret Service have to educate the protectees? Are they, you know, do they get a briefing about what to expect if something like this occurs, what to do, how to react?
They do get a briefing. They obviously know where to stand, where not to move. So if you look at podiums, and again, a lot of the podiums, not this one specifically, but most podiums, especially the president, a lot of them are ballistic in nature. So they understand, hey, when you're speaking, don't step away from the podium. Or if they do step away, it's choreographed. Not all protectees are the same. There are some protectees that really listen. They follow the script. They don't go off script. They do and they move as you think they're going to do. And there are some that, well, you have, and they will do what they want. Now, you have to manage both. But when you do have, I don't want to say that they're wild cards, but when you have that protectee who decides, I'm going to stay on this rope line a little longer, or I'm going to make a beeline and go shake these people's hands, or I'm going to walk away and do this, does that kind of make the hair stand in the back of your neck? It absolutely does. It causes issues.
And of course, we know that within the next few days, there will be a vice presidential running mate selected by Mr. Trump, and that will be one more candidate you'll have to protect.
It is another candidate. As you know, as the people get added on, it's more, I don't want to say stress, but it's more resources that the U.S. Secret Service has to divvy out. And look, right now, it's all hands on deck. Anytime it's a campaign year, it's all hands on deck. And a lot of people don't know this, Lester. U.S. Secret Service, they have an investigative arm. They're actual criminal investigators. They work criminal investigations, fraud, counterfeit money, all sorts of things. Actually, they were created April 14th, 1865. President Lincoln was the one who created the U.S. Secret Service. And their mission was to combat counterfeit currency. It wasn't protection. Protection came later. Many years later, because there were so many different assassinations and assassination attempts made on presidents or presidential candidates, that the government stepped in and said, U.S. Secret Service, will you now do protection? So during campaign years, all the criminal investigations stop, all these other things stop because the manpower goes to protection. And look, the world is watching. Right now, we're sharing this. Everybody's watching. The world is watching. And one of the things is, this is truly a symbolic thing. You know, often people would say to me, how could you take a bullet for this person or that person? They would see it on a very individual or personal level. You don't take a bullet for the person. It's something bigger. It's symbolic. What does it mean symbolically to the world, not just to the American people, when somebody can cause harm to one of the most powerful world leaders? It sends a message, and it's also the image of the U.S. It can either strengthen us or weaken us, and perception is reality when it comes to politics and how the world sees us.
Well, it's an important calling, and we've certainly seen it in action tonight. We appreciate you breaking it down as we come to understand what goes on behind these pictures and how it all played out tonight in Pennsylvania. Abby, thank you. We'll hopefully be able to come back to you here shortly. Our viewers just joining us, we are on the air with rolling breaking coverage. We have been covering the shooting at Donald Trump's Pennsylvania rally this evening. The former president has been injured in what appears to be an apparent assassination attempt. The Secret Service says the president is safe. Tonight, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that he was, in fact, hit with a bullet that pierced the upper part of his right ear. He said that he felt it ripping through his skin. What I want to do again here is pause. We're going to roll the video of what happened just shortly after 6 p.m. here on the East Coast while Mr. Trump was speaking. And listen carefully. You'll hear the sound of the gunshots and what appears to be the moments right after that until he is rushed into his car. Here it is.
A little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Move it there. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go.
All guys here.
Move it to the stair.
Get ready.
You ready? We're good. Shooters down. Are we good to move?
We're clear.
Let's move.
We're clear.
Come on. Let me get my shoes. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes.
Hold on, your head is bloody.
So we got to move to the car.
Let me get my shoes.
Watch out.
And that is the point that he's put in the car and taken to a medical facility. Here's what we know right now. If you're just joining us, the gunman fired a weapon from a high point outside the perimeter of the rally. So outside the Secret Service security area, if you will. The shooter, described as a male, is dead. Also, a spectator who was attending the rally has been killed, and 2 others who were there were critically injured, according to the Secret Service. President Biden has been briefed. He addressed the nation a little while ago.
But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
And former President Trump has issued a statement extending his condolences to the loved ones of the rally goer who was killed and the others who were injured. He also thanked law enforcement and first responders for their quick action. His campaign says he is fine and has been checked out at a local medical center. His son, Don Jr., weighed in, saying his dad is in great spirits. His daughter, Ivanka, wrote on social media, thanking supporters for their love and prayers for her father and the other victims of today's senseless violence. And another important note, Mr. Trump says he looks forward to attending the Republican convention in Milwaukee this coming week. Let's get right to NBC investigative correspondent Tom Witter, who has more on the investigation. Tom?
That's right, Lester. In a statement we received just moments ago from the FBI, they say, quote, they have assumed the role of the lead federal law enforcement agency in the investigation of the incident involving former President Donald Trump that occurred earlier today in Butler, Pennsylvania. The statement goes on to say, Lester, that special agents of the FBI Pittsburgh field office responded immediately to include crisis response team members and evidence response technicians. They say we will continue to support this investigation with the full resources of the FBI alongside our partners at the U.S. Secret Service and state and local law enforcement. And Lester, tonight they're asking anybody that might have any information about what led up to the shooting today and the shooting itself to call 1-800-CALL-FBI. FBI. So that's the latest statement we just received moments ago from the FBI, who has taken the lead on this. They'll work with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Pennsylvania that's based in Pittsburgh. If there's going to be any sort of a criminal prosecution, to type up the warrants and get the information to continue to pursue this investigation, as you and I have been talking about now for several hours. As far as what we know, we still do not yet have a name of the alleged shooter in this incident. The shooter, based on images, video, and descriptions from law enforcement that we've seen, appears to be, if you were to look at the former president head on from the video that we've been looking at, appears to have been off to his right, and that the shooting was, we've been described to us as several hundred yards away, that the shooter was on top of an elevated surface and then was shot and killed by the United States Secret Service. And then law enforcement obviously rushed to where the shots were coming from. How many shots were specifically fired from the shooter and from the Secret Service or maybe other members of law enforcement, we just don't know. He has been described as a male, and that's really the only information that we have. His specific motives or background, is he somebody who law enforcement has ever been in contact with before? Those are all questions that we are asking, we've been asking, and we're trying to get that to you, of course, as soon as possible. As far as where things go from here, there's obviously a convention involving this candidate starting in just a day plus time, and he is expected to address the RNC obviously on Thursday evening. He has a vice president pick to make, and so what would be normally a very busy time for the Secret Service as they pick up a potential vice president or a vice president candidate, as I should say, that now it's going to be only so much more intense because of this obvious apparent assassination attempt on the former president and the presumptive Republican nominee. And so this changes the game radically. The New York City Police Department tonight beefing up their presence outside of the Trump Tower, just a couple of blocks from where you and I are sitting up Fifth Avenue, where, of course, the former president has a residence. Now, he hasn't been staying there. His new residence is Mar-a-Lago in Florida, as you know, but they have beefed up out of an abundance of caution. No specific intelligence that something would happen at Trump Tower, but I think based on the events today, you can see any of the Trump properties where he has stayed, where he might stay, to face an increased law enforcement presence until everybody figures out exactly what's going on here. We've seen no indication that there are any other individuals involved. On the other hand, nobody so far has told us that there are no other individuals involved, and that's obviously part of an active investigation. They do have images of this person, they do have their body, and so presumably they do have an identification as well. And so we'll continue to track the specifics about this person, what may have led up to it, and all the questions that we would normally ask, including the type of weapon that may have been used in this. But obviously, law enforcement, I could tell you, up and down the East Coast tonight, acutely aware of what happened today and following it very closely. And as you and I have discussed on numerous occasions in your exclusive interview with the FBI director, we are no doubt in a heightened threat environment. They've been very concerned about the idea of some sort of a political-based violence. And obviously tonight it appears we've seen exactly that, Lester.
All right. Tom Winter, our investigative producer, with the very latest. Tom, thanks very much. We should note while you were talking, we got word that the President Biden, will be cutting short his Delaware weekend and heading back to the White House, apparently as a result of all of this. NBC's Dasha Burns is just outside that Trump rally. She was there when the shots rang out. Dasha, earlier we saw people, you were talking to people who were leaving the rally site. Were any of them detained, not obviously for suspects, but detained for questioning as witnesses of what they saw?
Yeah, Lester, one of the gentlemen that we spoke with who was right next to the man who was shot and killed. He was just next to him, a couple of yards away at the rally. He actually said he helped to carry his body out of the venue. He's an OBGYN from Pennsylvania. His name is Joseph. We spoke with him earlier as we've been in this parking lot. Here you see now night has fallen in Butler County. This parking lot that was just recently filled with thousands and thousands of cars, people who came here for a political rally, never thinking that something like this would happen here in Butler County, a small rural area that's typically pretty quiet. Now this lot is empty, and we did have a conversation with that man, Joseph, who says he has been waiting to speak with Secret Service. We're going to follow up with him to see how that conversation went, but he said he had been planning on having that conversation. I want you to take a listen to some of this interview and some of what he heard. That is where I ran into a man named Joseph, and I want to introduce him to you now. And as we just learned, Joseph, you weren't listening to the program here, but Lester Holt, NBC News, just reporting that one of the attendees has deceased, has died from injuries as a result of the shooting. Joseph, you told me off camera that you may have witnessed this, and I'm so sorry to be talking to you in this tragic moment, but can you describe what it is that you saw?
I was attending the rally. I was in the set of bleachers, the very far left of the podium where President Trump was speaking. I was there with friends. I heard several gunshots. The man beside me suffered a gunshot wound to the head, was instantly killed, fell to the bottom of the bleachers. Another woman looked like she got hit in the forearm or hand. And then at that point in time, it was rather chaotic at that point because half the people were looking because they thought it was fireworks. I knew it was gunshots right away. My friend, he hit the deck. I was kind of looking around just trying to see where the shots were coming from. It seemed to me like the shots were coming from behind the bleachers. It seemed to me the man got hit in the head from behind. He was killed instantly as far as I could tell. And at that point, state police and a SWAT team, started evacuating the bleachers, and then I helped carry the man out of the bleachers to a tent that was behind.
And Lester, that's just one of the several harrowing stories that we heard from eyewitnesses today, people of all ages, people talking about the children that they saw, who they're so concerned about, who obviously are going to live with this trauma for the rest of their lives. Our own team, it was myself, my producer Bianca, our cameraman Sirkin, our audio technician Henry, our embed Jake. We were all there. We were all in the press pen when we heard those shots first ring out. All of us initially thinking this must be fireworks. There's no way this could happen here. We know how intense the security is around these events, and then coming to realize the reality of the situation, that it was in fact what we fear most when we think about the divisive political environment that we are in right now. I spoke to another woman named Vanessa, who was just a few rows behind the former president. She says she witnessed him turn his head to point out a screen that was on the side of him where there was a chart showing immigration statistics. He turned to point at the moment that she saw that blood come out of his ear, that we now know from his own True Social post was a bullet grazing his ear. She says if he hadn't turned his head at that very moment, things could have been very different for the former president and the current Republican candidate for president of the United States, Lester.
Yeah, I think anybody that looks at that picture comes to the same conclusion how close this was. Dasha, thanks. Rico Elmore was at the Trump rally and spoke at the event. He was an eyewitness and says he saw someone get hit by gunfire and rush to their side. He joins me on the phone. Rico, where were you in relation to the president?
So I was about 15, 20 feet to the president's right. I was a special guest, being that I spoke today with a few other friends of mine. We were speaking as well. And yeah, I was like 15, 20 feet away.
And then as the shots rang out, did you identify them as shots right away? How did you react?
So a part of me thought they were fireworks. It was like a split mental thought, because I'm like, oh, you can't have a gun or anything in this area because of the security measures that are in place. It's impossible. So my brain says, that's a firework going off. How did I get here? Who knows? But it's something small. And then I heard the second shot go off, and like I said, these were split seconds. So like, I said, that's a gun. It's a firearm. So I got up. I yelled everyone to get down. Everybody was getting down. Everybody was yelling, get down. I told people to get down. And then as I'm just pointing people and telling people, like, you know, get down. It's safe measures. And people were listening. And then I seen they had yelled for the medic, and there was an individual who was hit in the head. And there was no medical personnel in the area. So I ran to try to get them, you know, to get help.
Was this the individual that we believe was deceased?
Yes. I jumped over the barrier that was there. I ran up into the bleachers, and there was a towel that the people had, and I took the towel and I pushed it against the deceased head, and just to try to, it's all I can think about doing was trying to, you know, help them. But my efforts were in vain.
Yeah, Rico, you went to what was supposed to be a rally. It's supposed to be a fun thing for, you know, the party and candidate faithful, and it turns to this. These things sometimes take a long time to sink in, to know how close you were to danger. But have you seen any of the video, and just share with me your thoughts?
My thoughts are for the family. My thoughts are for the ones that were lost tonight in an act that was senseless and cowardice, all because of a feeling that one would have against an individual. No one had to lose their lives. You have the freedom of speech. You have the freedom to assemble. You have the freedom. You can go protest the fact that President Trump was there. Okay, that's fine. But to try to kill, to shoot into a crowd of thousands of people, I can't fathom that.
Yeah.
But my heart goes out to the families. It's unreal.
When did you realize the former president had been shot?
I didn't.
See,
Secret Service protects the president.
So they surrounded him as they're supposed to do.
They did their job. My job was to get to the victims and to the people. I mean, that's what I felt my job was to do. You know. Are you attending the Republican National Convention this week? No.
No. Okay. All right. Well, Rico, thank you so much for.
Unless
go ahead.
Unless you know, they call me up and say we want you to attend and we'll fly you out here, I'm not attending.
Okay, understood. Listen, thank you for talking to us. I'm sorry you had to witness what you did. It's awful to hear, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Garrett Haight covers former President Trump, and Garrett, Donald Trump has posted tonight on Truth Social. He filled in a lot of the blanks for us. Give us a sense of what he wrote.
That's right, Lester. While Donald Trump's campaign has been all but silent tonight, the candidate himself has been speaking out on Truth Social, in which he describes the incident from his perspective, talking about being up on stage and saying that he was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of his right ear. He says, "I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place," he said. "So I realized then what had happened." Lester, the former president also thanks law enforcement and offers his condolences to the person who was killed at the rally and another, he says, who was badly injured. I think we now know that there were two people who were badly injured. He also talks about the idea that he says it's incredible that an act like this can take place in our country, and says that even he knew nothing about the shooter at the time. That has been the only communication we have gotten from Donald Trump directly. What more we've been able to piece together has come from his son, Donald Trump Jr., who said on his social media that he had spoken with his father and that he was in good spirits, and from a statement combined from the RNC and from the Trump campaign about the convention set to get underway in Milwaukee on Monday that you were just describing, essentially saying that the convention will move forward and that Donald Trump looks forward to seeing people there, some 50,000 people expected to descend on Milwaukee. That's most of what we know about the former president's condition right now. We have no indication that that he's been discharged from the hospital, no indication that he's returned to his plane or left the Pennsylvania area. He had nothing on his official calendar tomorrow. We were not expecting to see him pop up anywhere on Sunday. And on Monday, obviously, with the convention getting underway, we did expect to hear, perhaps by some point early Monday, who his choice for a vice presidential running mate was going to be. There'd been a lot of speculation, obviously, coming into this weekend, the last before the convention, that announcement could have come at today's rally. I guess now we will never know. But the nomination of the VP and of the nominee, the president, if you will, Donald Trump, is set to take place on Monday. So we will have to know that name at some point. How that announcement goes forward, in what capacity it goes forward, are one of the thousands of political questions that are going to come out of this moment, something unlike which we have ever seen before in American politics. I can tell you that one of Donald Trump's most senior campaign advisors, his de facto campaign manager, Chris LaCivita, who was with him at this rally in Pennsylvania, has also posted on social media recently. And I think it's a bit of a preview of what we're going to hear from the campaign, and certainly what we're hearing from the kind of greater MAGA universe of Trump supporters. He writes, Chris LaCivita, the campaign manager, writes, for years, even today, leftist activists, Democratic donors, and now even Joe Biden, he alludes to a comment from the current president. He says, have made disgusting remarks and descriptions of shooting Donald Trump. It's high time they be held accountable for it. The best way is through the ballot box. So at least the campaign manager, and Lester, I suspect soon the greater campaign apparatus and Republican Party, I think was going to take this moment to turn the language that we've been using collectively about this campaign, the stakes of it, on its head, and try to use it as a way to say both the temperature has to come down, and that somehow, as LaCivita says, those on the left should be punished electorally for what happened to Donald Trump today.
Garrett, does the former president typically go home, or does he sleep on the road when he's on these campaign trips?
No, Lester, he almost never sleeps on the road. Donald Trump prefers to sleep at his own properties. So depending on where he is in the country, we often see him either return to Mar-a-Lago in Florida, to his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, or to Trump Tower in New York City, or to a Trump property, either in a place like Trump hotel property, either in a place like Chicago or Las Vegas. It was our understanding he'd be going back to one of the Trump properties on the East Coast tonight, most likely Bedminster, his golf club in New Jersey. From there, he would travel to Milwaukee. Whether that plan changes tonight, I think, is an open question. Obviously, Mar-a-Lago, all these properties are secured. We've heard from the NYPD tonight that they're sending extra resources to Trump Tower. All of these were properties that were secured by the Secret Service when Donald Trump was president. I can't speak to which ones are more secure than others, but I can say that obviously Mar-a-Lago is a private club, but it's a functioning, members-only club. So Donald Trump lives in a separate portion of that when he is there. At Bedminster, typically much fewer staff, much smaller footprint, less folks around. I would be speculating, but I can imagine you would probably want to be at one of these smaller, more easily protected locations here tonight, maybe less likely to go back to a place like Mar-a-Lago where other folks are likely to be there tonight. Yeah.
All right, Garrett Haake, we appreciate it. Thanks very much. Our senior White House correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell, joins us with her latest reporting. We understand President Biden is on the move this evening.
It is unusual to see the president traveling very late at night, but these circumstances have warranted that in his judgment. He will be leaving his Rehoboth Beach, Delaware residence and traveling back to the White House tonight. We expect that he will arrive here in Washington after midnight, returning to the White House sometime around 12:30 in the morning. This is a change in his schedule. It is absolutely as a result of the incident today. We heard from the president publicly in two forms already tonight. First, a written statement, and then, as you were in the chair earlier, when he spoke to the small group of reporters with him in Delaware, known as the Traveling Press Pool, and he addressed the concerns about this incident and said that he was trying to reach former President Trump to speak to him directly and personally by phone. They had not done so at that point. He described how he has been briefed by the head of the Secret Service, his Secretary of Homeland Security, and also other officials, including his Homeland Security advisor within the White House, who would be steeped in the knowledge of any potential threats. The president saying that he, of course, wants everyone across the political spectrum throughout the country to stand against acts of political violence, saying it cannot happen in America, should not happen in America. So with that as the backdrop, the president will be traveling back here tonight. We don't have specifics about how his schedule might change further. He certainly had plenty of events coming up in the days ahead. So that will be kind of a piece-by-piece moment as they assess the status of the investigation. I expect the president would want to have additional briefings, and by coming back to Washington, he could speak directly with some of the officials who are based here. Separately, I've been doing reporting that really began before this incident took place about changes coming at the Secret Service because of the Trump candidacy, going from former president who has a certain level of Secret Service detail to the status of being the presumptive nominee, about to be formally the nominee of the Republican Party, and the fact that they had made plans to increase the size of his protective detail and the teams around him because of the change in campaign pace and because of the necessities of travel. That certainly is borne out by these awful events today. In addition, 3 plane loads of on a chartered aircraft, 3 planes carrying Secret Service personnel traveled yesterday from their various assignments to Milwaukee for the convention, where they were intended to be going for a few purposes. Of course, all the related security for the convention itself, but also including the detail in waiting for the running mate selection, depending on the choice made by the former president about who he will run with on the ticket. And so preparing for that person's immediate family to be protected by Secret Service, adding another protectee in the sphere of what the Secret Service does. So these are some of the moving parts that are happening. Big questions, of course, about how does the political calendar change because of that? What's happening with the investigative pieces, learning many more details about who has been harmed today, the innocent victims who have been caught up in this, as well as a real medical status on the former president, and any information that we can gain through our reporting and with our law enforcement reporting colleagues about the suspected attempted assassin here, the gunman responsible. All of that unfolding on a Saturday night in a steamy Washington as we are trying to learn more details. For the president to be back here, that, of course, gives him easy access to convene meetings with his officials, and we'll stay on it as there are additional developments. Of course, the Secret Service provided some details that you've discussed at length tonight, having covered many Trump rallies when he was president and when he was a candidate in the last cycle. These are such well-attended events, huge crowds often, and covering events for the current president, President Biden, where he is out on the campaign trail. The security always includes a lot of screening, and that's why it was so notable that we were able to report that this gunman taken out and neutralized in the term of law enforcement by the Secret Service was outside that perimeter. Many questions still to be explored and investigation to be done. But President Biden will be returning here tonight, and we hope to have an update on whether he has reached the former president by phone. Lester?
All right, Kelly, thanks. We're going to try to shed a little more light on what you're talking about there. We're going to show you some new video our team has obtained. We want to warn you it's disturbing. If you look at the blurred part of your screen, that appears to show the suspect's body at the scene of the shooting. NBC News confirmed from multiple law enforcement officials the suspect was male. We also learned the suspect is dead. We have not confirmed his identity yet, but this, as you can see, is an elevated position which would be consistent with what officials have been reporting, that this shooter was operating from a superior, a higher ground, if you will, or in this case, perhaps a building of some sort. All this will, the investigation, frankly, is moving at a pretty good clip here. We are getting more information by the hour here, so we'll continue to do that. I want to bring back retired ATF Special Agent Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, what do you make of that video?
Well, it's really surprising, Lester. And really, one of the things that shocked me first in this event is when we learned that it was a long rifle shot. We haven't seen long rifle attack on politicians really since the 60s. The last one I remember was Dr. King in 68 and, of course, John F. Kennedy. But they were rifle shots. But every other attack on Reagan, the two attacks on President Ford, the attack on George Wallace when he was candidate, they were all handguns. And the reason is that since the 63 assassination of John Kennedy, the Secret Service has always held the high ground. I was never on a Secret Service detail, and I was on a number when I was in ATF for all those years, where they didn't have command of all the high ground. So I'm really shocked. I'm surprised that at the top of a building or shed or barn or whatever that is, a couple hundred yards away is not already have been commanded by the Secret Service and the police working with them. It's very surprising to me. My question that I want to find out is, what was the garb of the killer, or what was he wearing? He killed a man at the rally, and he tried to kill President Trump. What was he wearing? Was he wearing a tactical outfit that maybe some of the law enforcement members mistook that he was supposed to be there, that he looked
Jim,
like an agent?
When we played the tape, I have noticed, so you hear kind of a rapid gunfire. The sounds in the background, and then there's a pause, and then we hear another shot and people scream. I presume that other shot is when they took down the shooter. I'm making a presumption here. But it too sounded in the background. Did you pick up on that as well?
Yes, I think you're right. It's the distance. It's the distance from the microphones. The CAT team, you'll see that the two agents that are walking around on the dais there in the tactical garb, they're part of the Secret Service CAT team, CAT, Counterattack on Terrorist Team. And they'll have long rifles, and they'll have members, long rifle teams on top of buildings. I think you showed pictures of them earlier just on some feed. And they'll have a scope, a bipod, binoculars, telescope. They're two-man teams, and they're watching, and they can take the long shot. And that was likely their response when they picked up a shooter. That's their training all the time. And, they're on the roof of the White House, and they're on all the high ground whenever a protectee is moving. And I think Evie mentioned it earlier, that sometimes if they don't have enough members of the team, especially in campaign years when there's a lot of candidates and so forth, they'll use a state police SWAT, a major city SWAT team, local SWAT team to get up there and do that. So I'm just really surprised that there was a building that someone could get on within rifle range of a protectee.
Yeah. That's one of the many areas that will certainly come to light, I guess, in the coming hours here. I want to go back to our senior White House correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, we've been talking about President Biden's statement earlier. You've got an update on that.
In just the few moments that we have not been talking, Lester, we've now been advised that President Biden did reach former President Trump by phone. They have now had a conversation. President Biden earlier in the evening had said he had attempted to reach him, likely during the time that the former president was undergoing whatever medical evaluation may be taking place. We now know from the White House they have spoken. And he has also spoken with the governor of Pennsylvania and an official from Butler County, which is the location where this incident took place. So the president working the phones to make contact with his predecessor, who is also his current rival, and to make that human connection while also reaching out to the local and state officials who are directly affected by this. We expect within a few minutes, President Biden will be departing from his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, to begin making the trip back here to Washington. He had said he wanted to make that connection. He has now done so. And tomorrow, we are told that he will also have, once back here at the White House, an updated briefing on all of the investigative pieces that between now and tomorrow, perhaps there'll be some of those blanks filled in as the president will want to talk to his top officials who are working to try to identify more details about what happened, who was involved, what motivations or warnings, if any, might have been detected in advance, and what the next steps will be. So the president on the move tonight, the former president, and he's speaking, and more briefings to come. That's the latest we have from here, Lester.
All right, Kelly, thanks very much. David McCormick is the Republican nominee for a Senate seat in Pennsylvania. He was at the rally in the front row there. Sir, can you tell us how close you were to the president?
Yeah. Good evening, Lester. I don't know, probably 20, 30 feet maybe. I was right to the right of President Trump in the first row there. And he came out and announced me and said, "Hey, why don't you come up on the stage?" And I started to get up and go on the stage. And then he said, "No, I'll have you come up later." And then within a minute or two, the shooting started. And, there were, 6 or 7 shots. And it was pretty clear right away it was a gun, and people dropped. And obviously the president went down, and the Secret Service was on top of him. And then he eventually stood up, and the Secret Service sort of had a phalanx around him. And you saw that you could see blood on him, and you saw the fists come out in both defiance and I think reassurance and strength. And at about the same time, I recognized that somebody behind me had been wounded. In the bleachers behind me, and sadly, it looked like pretty severely wounded. And the people in the bleachers next to him were trying to stop the bleeding, but there was blood everywhere. And I'm not sure if that was the person who was in intensive care, or the person who died. But it was clear that even though President Trump had, I guess, been nicked, that others were very, very seriously wounded. So
it's not lost on you.
It was a very frightening moment.
Not lost on you that had you accepted the invitation to go on stage, you too might have been on the line of fire. Yeah, no, it absolutely was, and it was obvious that there was an assassination attempt on the former president, and a really scary moment. It was just like it was 15,000 people there, and this had only been my second Trump rally, but it was, USA Today and lots of energy and lots of positive noise. And then all of a sudden just shattered with these rifle shots. And it was just sort of people were in disbelief. It was very chaotic and very confusing for quite some time. What were you hearing during all this? Our microphones were able to pick up a lot of it, but I'm curious from someone on the ground there as this is all happening. You heard the shots. Did the former president say anything at all? Not that I heard. It was all moving in such a fast pace, and there was a young boy next to me, and his grandfather was a local sheriff, so the sheriff ran off to sort of deal with what was going on, and he was very frightened. So people were processing it. I didn't hear anything the president said. What became clear is that somebody was really hurt, so people were calling for medics and getting emergency care in, and so it quickly went from the shooting to dealing with what had happened, but also with the uncertainty whether the shooting was done. And at the time I thought it was possible there were 2 shooters, not just one, because it felt like the sounds were coming from multiple directions. And so, in these moments like this, I had been an Army guy earlier in my life, and it's very hard to know exactly what's going on. So you have to kind of go slow so you don't misunderstand the situation. And that's what I tried to do, was just to process and keep my head down and try to help deal with some of the challenges that resulted in some of the injuries that resulted. Mr. McCormick, are you attending the RNC, the Republican National Convention, this coming week? I am, yes. Do you do that with some deal of trepidation after what you've experienced and what you saw? Well, I'm still processing, what I saw, but as a public, I'm hoping to be a public official here as a candidate. One of the things you don't want your family to have to worry about is your safety. It's hard enough to be in political life. It's so nasty and difficult, but then to think that your life may be at risk is something that I haven't thought much about, but my family's certainly thinking about tonight. And I think probably all families of people that are in the public eye are saying, boy, this is a lot to ask. So I think it's a moment that I hope we all step back. Political violence has no place in our country. It's not a party thing. It's absolutely un-American. And, hopefully a night like tonight will give us all pause and
help dial down the temperature a little bit.
Yeah, I think that probably is a bipartisan thought tonight. We've been hearing in reaction to all this. I think there is universal shock and disgust that this sort of thing would happen. Thank you, Mr. McCormick, for talking to us. We really appreciate it. Our investigative correspondent, Tom Winter, is back with us. Tom, you have some new details on how the shooting took place. What can you tell us?
That's right. You were showing a video a moment ago, and maybe we can take a couple of seconds about how it was and pull it up. But we'll stay on this video for now. You see Trump looking over to his right. In this video right here that we're looking at of this kind of a tan building with the white roof, what's blurred out there is what is believed to be the body of the alleged shooter. To answer a question our colleague Jim Kavanaugh was asking before, it appears to me, looking at this video without the blur, that he is wearing some sort of a camouflage type pant. It's not clear to me whether they're wearing any sort of a tactical gear or not. In a separate video we're examining that we believe to be accurate, it appears that the Secret Service counter sniper team, so they're looking for people that might shoot at former President Trump or whoever they're protecting on that day, and they would be in a position to shoot at that person or at least spot them. It appears that they noticed this individual or at least are in the kind of looking in the general area, and it appears that they fire back in less than a second or so after the initial shot is fired. It's not clear, frankly, who fires first. So that's a little bit of detail. And according to our colleagues at NBCnews.com, and we're looking at the map now, they just put this together. It's you're looking at the location of where it appears the body was found and approximately where the stage is where the former president spoke today. And as they've done the math, there are approximately 148 yards between those two locations. So you can kind of get a sense of how all this went down, and grateful to our colleagues for bringing this up so quickly. So that's what we know as far as the location of this and the geography, as we get a better sense of what's going on. Separately, we just got word from the FBI that Christopher Wray, who is the FBI director, has conducted a briefing right now of the National Security Council of the United States. He's briefed President Biden and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan as well. So again, FBI Director Christopher Wray, now that the FBI has taken over this investigation, they're the lead agency, has briefed the president, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and the NSC on the status of the investigation as best as the FBI knows it at this point. So all of this is happening as we've been speaking here and looking at these videos and examining what has happened, but obviously a clear picture. We are told by the Secret Service that that rooftop, approximately 148 yards away, was outside of their security perimeter. So anybody going to this event, the people you see in the rally, in the foreground of this camera shot, in the background, sitting behind Trump, those individuals would have been screened and gone through magnetometers and made sure that there was nothing on their person, certainly no weapons on their person. That would have occurred. This shooting appears to have been outside of that location. And the question is going to be now is, did that individual have line of sight? Should the perimeter have been pushed back further? And what exactly happened leading up to this? So obviously continued questions. There are calls for Congress for briefings from the Secret Service. That'll take place in the coming days. The questions are being asked right now, and we'll see where all this goes as far as the security plan. And as I alluded to earlier, as we all know, Trump has to make his vice president pick, or is expected to in the coming couple of days. That only ramps up how busy the Secret Service is, because that individual needs to get protection as well. And once Trump is the nominee, he would normally get the full protection on top of what he gets as a former president. Well, obviously now we can assume that from here on out, Trump will have protection in his rallies, and the way that they're secured we have to assume will change here almost immediately, Lester.
All right, Tom, thanks. That map was very helpful to offer us a little perspective and kind of begin to piece together in our minds how this shooting took place. Let me bring in on the telephone Melody and Brent Hook. They were at this evening's rally and witnessed the shootings. Melanie or Brent, can you tell us what you saw and heard?
Yeah, we were sitting there, and all of a sudden we just heard, of course, what sounded like gunshots, and just total chaos then happened. I kind of looked to my right, and I saw the individual who got shot in the bleachers. I saw his hat come off. And then we just started grabbing everybody around us and just got down in the bleachers and just kind of hovered over everybody, trying to protect everybody around us. And it was right beside us.
Yeah, there was as we see in the video, there was a lot going on. The tactical teams were moving, the team moving around the former president. At that point, did you know what to do, how to protect yourself?
Well, yes and no. We just, everything's happening so quick and you're not sure how many shooters there are or where they're at or anything. So you just kind of like I said earlier, I've just used my mother's instincts and just grabbed the little girl behind me and just put her down in the bleachers and covered over top of her. And the rest of our family kind of gathered all around everybody else. And yeah, you don't ever plan for anything like that. So you just kind of have to just go with what you feel at the moment, I guess. I don't know. It was definitely terrifying.
So you were in the bleachers, really behind where the former president was?
We were off to his, if he was facing forward, we were off to the right. We were in the same set of bleachers where the guy was shot at.
Oh my God.
We were just a few feet from him.
Is this somebody you had met or encountered?
I think we had talked to him in line coming in, but we didn't know who he was personally, no.
We know this is, we don't have to get deep into it. We know this is a tough campaign right now. But did you ever imagine you would face this sort of thing at a rally?
Absolutely not. No, we are 100% Trump supporters. This was our first rally we ever attended. We were not in the least bit worried about anything like that. So we just pray that he's okay. And we pray for the families who, suffered everything. We're just not, my husband especially, he can kind of say his little point, but we're just don't know how this happened. There was so much presence there, police presence and snipers, and I don't know how that guy possibly was able to do this.
Yeah, your husband, Brent?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, Brent, you did go through magnetometers, the metal detectors and all that. So did you feel safe going into this arena?
Oh, yeah. I felt safe going into it. You go through it and they double and triple check people, from what I saw. But like I heard earlier, that it was outside the perimeters or something like that, I guess, where this guy was at. And somebody told me 140 some yards or something like that. I think it was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking a good
so
200 to 300.
You're familiar, you had seen the building that the shooting may have taken place?
Yeah, the sniper. Yeah, I seen both sets of snipers up on the two buildings right behind where Trump would have been. And I watched them guys look over at that building quite a bit. They looked over there with the binoculars quite a bit, and I didn't know what was going on. And that's exactly where the shots come from, was there at that building.
Well, look, I'm glad you folks are well. I'm sorry you had to see what you saw, but thank you for sharing your story and your account with us tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, NBC's Jesse Kirsch is outside the former president's home in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Jesse, you have Trump supporters showing up near his home throughout the evening, expressing their support.
That's right, Lester. And we still have a crowd out here right now. We're going to cut to another camera angle and show you just on the other side of my camera lens. You can see there are some people gathering. We've had people with Trump flags, Trump campaign flags, American flags, people driving by honking horns. For hours now, there have been people out here expressing their support for the former president. I do want to show you the presence behind us here at Mar-a-Lago, the former president's home. I'm going to step off to the side. Our photographer is going to push in. You can see red and blue lights, what appear to be on a police vehicle on the property. Our team has seen what appears to be at least 2 police vehicles stationed on that property tonight. But what I can tell you is from our producer, Juliet, who has been driving around the area, has been in the area before, there does not appear at this point to be any obvious demonstrable up-ramp of the physical, visible security presence here. Of course, that's only speaking to what we can visibly see out here right now. So that's not saying anything about what might be going on inside the fence line of the property at this point. But from our perspective out here, there does not appear to be an obvious ramp up of the physical security presence. We should note this is not just the home of the former president. This is where his youngest child, Barron Trump lives, as well as his wife, Melania Trump. We know that the former First Lady was, before all this unfolded, expected to be at the RNC in Milwaukee this week. We do not at this point have any guidance on their whereabouts, either the former First Lady or Barron Trump at this point. So we don't know if they are at this property. I can tell you that since we've been here and our team has been out here for hours at this point, we have not seen any kind of up-ramp, again, of a security presence, no motorcade coming or going that would suggest any movements of the former First family on this property in this area at Palm Beach tonight, Lester.
All right, Jesse Kirsch, thank you very much. We want to go to Garrett Hake right now. He covers former President Trump. And Garrett, this is all happening in the middle of a presidential election that is lost on no one.
Yeah, Lester, I mean, the contours of where we are right now are fascinating. We've had over the last several weeks since the presidential debate a situation in which Donald Trump, who likes the spotlight of campaigning more than any other politician I've ever covered, has almost entirely stayed out of it. All of the headlines over the last 2 weeks have been about Joe Biden and would he remain as the Democratic nominee. We were starting to talk about Donald Trump again in the context of this rally today and the opening of his convention on Monday, because he was going to have to name his vice presidential nominee, something that would pull that spotlight back to him, and then have the chance to introduce himself again to the country at a convention. One of the very few events that a candidate can ever fully control on their own during the heat of a presidential election. Instead, we find ourselves tonight, Saturday night, probably bleeding well into Sunday morning, in the exact opposite situation, an assassination attempt, something no candidate could ever possibly control, that's liable to completely upend the contours of this election. We know that the president and the former president have spoken tonight in the aftermath of this, and we know that the RNC, according to the organizers and the former president statement that appears in his name, seems to indicate at least, will go forward on Monday in some capacity. But what the speeches will be about, what the kind of contours of this campaign will be, how voters will react to seeing a nominee for a major party escorted off stage by Secret Service, covered in his own blood. I mean, this is just not something that modern voters have had to grapple with. When I'm talking to people tonight, not just my sources, but sort of the normal people in my life consuming this all, there is so much shock and anger and sadness that we are in this place as a country, and we're in this place in July. How this all changes over the next couple of months, when especially we now know the House of Representatives, at least, if not the Senate as well, will be investigating this shooting. We'll be talking about it for weeks, if not months. So the motivations behind the shooter, when we find out what they are. I mean, there's just such a butterfly effect moment to have happen in what's normally the doldrums of summer pre-convention in a presidential election that now could shape much of the next several months of this race.
Yeah, you say that, and I had to think for a second. You're right. We are in July, and this is normally a period where we get a little bit of a breath before heading into the meat of the campaign, but not to be. Thank you, Garrett. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard has been covering the Trump campaign. He joins us now from the RNC at the Convention Center in Milwaukee. I assume that a lot of the delegates have already arrived and that word has circulated. What kind of reaction are you hearing there?
Right. Thousands of delegates are already here in Milwaukee. There have already been several committees that are a part of this convention that have already been meeting here this weekend in the lead up to Monday's formal festivities beginning. Of course, it's Monday night when the first primetime speakers will begin. Of course, Donald Trump's family is expected to be here as well. Melania Trump, Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric. Donald Trump himself, the presumptive Republican nominee, is set to take the stage here this upcoming Thursday night in prime time. To our understanding, the plans continue as they were initially set. Just a few hours before this apparent assassination took place, the speakers for this convention were announced. For the RNC here, there are delegates that are going to be coming here and going to be filling up this arena. We've already been watching the Secret Service here on site beginning their initial sweeps here to ensure the security of this perimeter here. There is a soft perimeter and there's a hard perimeter around the greater convention convention site here in downtown Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This has been a convention now years in the making here for this moment. It was 8 years ago, the last time that there was a formal Republican convention of this sort. Of course, the 2000 convention happening at the heart of the pandemic. There was no crowd. There were no mass delegations here. And so for this event here, it is going to be moving on us forward. I talked to two different delegates just a short time ago, one telling me that they believe this only increases the energy level here and the intensity and the commitment to support the likes of Donald Trump, the former president, the presumptive Republican nominee, who's expected on Monday to be formally nominated inside of this arena with the several thousand delegates on hand. Lester.
All right, thank you. So let's go to national security analyst Frank Figluzzi. And Frank, the FBI has taken over the investigation. What does that mean in a practical sense?
Yeah, Lester, this is actually mandated by regulation. It's been written long ago, and the history of it is fascinating because it anticipates the unlikely event that maybe the Secret Service would cover up an incident or even be involved in it, God forbid. So we expected the FBI to come in and take this over. What it means is the full panoply of the FBI will be involved, from high-tech crime scene analysis, but more immediately, Lester, all of the social media and computer devices of this shooter, all the interviews of his coworkers, family, neighbors, all of that, his entire life history will be reconstructed rather rapidly. And the goal here will be to see, number one, was anyone else involved? Is this part of a larger conspiracy? Was there anything that could have been done to head this off or intervene? They'll be looking at his weapon, where it came from. Was it purchased legally or not? Was he trained as a sniper ever in any profession that he may have held? And of course, what was his motive? And I caution people, don't draw conclusions. We don't know where this shooter really was coming from mentally, and that's where the FBI will be going. One of the early things they need to rule out is terrorism. They need to rule out that this wasn't a part of an international terrorism plot. So lots of things on the FBI's plate in the upcoming days and weeks.
This is, Merrick Garland has brought his team together. Is this truly a national security issue?
It clearly is. I mean, the world is watching here. They know we're all divided and polarized, and that we do tend to lean toward violence as a possible solution. This only makes things worse, not only internationally, but domestically. You've reported the RNC is starting on Monday. This is our iconic democratic process. The parties hold conventions. They pick their nominees. The question, can we do that securely and safely? And you will see changes come Monday in the planning around the RNC. So, for example, in the state of Wisconsin, you're not supposed to preclude anyone from carrying a weapon, even in a soft security zone, which is in place for the free speech and designated protest areas of the convention. I think those are going to get moved. There's also a parade route around the building for people who want to exercise free speech and assembly. That may be rethought. We're going to have to do things differently moving forward. And of course, the investigation of what went wrong here, why, if as reported is true, why was this building the shooter was on outside the perimeter when it clearly was within a sniper's range? We've got to figure that out too.
Are you fearful, or does law enforcement look at the possibility that something like this could inspire others who may have harbored similar thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. The copycat thing here, look, sadly, we've seen it over the last couple of years, haven't we, with people kind of taking on FBI buildings, and it doesn't end well for them, like Cincinnati, Ohio, or a man who tried to swing a weapon at FBI agents in Provo, Utah, who were arresting him. This kind of thing begets more violence and revenge. So if you're going to have protest areas in Milwaukee with presumably people who are anti-Trump, can you imagine people who think in their head the answer is to seek revenge for today's event, maybe against those who are protesting against Trump? This presents quite the challenge for next week.
And as this investigation unfolds, you reminded us not to glom on to what we think may be a motive in this case. But if there are connections, outlets, for example, for outside the United States, that would turn this into a much different animal.
It sure would. And look, the FBI Director Chris Wray, for example, has been telling Congress repeatedly now that there is strong indication of a potential for an international terror attack here. He used the language that it could look like the concert hall attack in Moscow recently by ISIS-K. Recently, the FBI arrested 8 men who migrated over the southern border from Tajikistan who are affiliated with ISIS-K. So, that is an ongoing concern, and the FBI is going to work quickly to try and put that angle to rest.
And the digital trail, we've seen that emerge in similar things before. Will that be the tell-all, essentially?
Today, people just vent all of their motives and frustrations online, and my guess is this will be the case here. We'll know pretty quickly, even through family interviews as well as social media, where this individual was coming from in terms of mindset.
All right, we continue to get video from the aftermath. You see people who were wounded, perhaps, or somehow otherwise injured there being treated in the confusion, the aftermath of all this. There's still photos, including ones like this, that have certainly gone viral among many of Donald Trump's supporters after he has survived what is an apparent assassination attempt in Pennsylvania today at a rally. This is the shot, the iconic shot now of the former president being whisked away to the safety of his vehicle. We're coming up at the top of the hour. We're going to take a very brief pause for some of our stations to start their local coverage. For others, Hallie Jackson will pick up the coverage in just a moment.
For our viewers just joining us, we are on the air with breaking news on this NBC News special report, a shooting at Donald Trump's Pennsylvania campaign rally. The former president has been hurt in an apparent assassination attempt. The Secret Service says the president is safe and that the shooter is dead. Tonight, Donald Trump is posting on Truth Social, his platform online, that he was hit with a bullet that he says pierced the upper part of his right ear. He said he felt it ripping through his skin. We have a lot to get to, but I want to pause here. We're going to roll the video of what happened just after 6 p.m. here on the East Coast while Mr. Trump was speaking. I want you to listen closely also to the sound of the shots and what you hear in the moments right after that until Mr. Trump is rushed into his motorcade. Watch.
A little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Move it there. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Move it to the stand. Get ready. You ready? Good. Shooter's down. Are we good to move? We're clear. Let's move. We're clear. Come on. Let me get my shoes. I got you, sir. Let me get my shoes. Hold on, your head is bloody. So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes. Okay. What's up?
You see that fist in the air from former President Trump as he is taken into his motorcade and then taken away. This is a map, the approximate area of the stage where Mr. Trump was shot and the location of the suspected gunman's body. Here's what we know right now, that suspected shooter fired a weapon from a roof outside the perimeter of the rally. So he was outside the Secret Service security area. The alleged gunman is dead. Also, a spectator who was attending the rally has been killed. 2 other spectators were badly hurt. President Biden has spoken with Mr. Trump. He is returning right now to the White House from Delaware, where earlier this evening, the president addressed the nation.
But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
Former President Trump has put out a statement extending his condolences to the loved ones of the rally-goer who was killed and to the others who were hurt. He also thanked law enforcement and first responders for their quick action and says he looks forward to the Republican convention in Milwaukee that is set to begin on Monday. I want to bring in now NBC's Dasha Burns, who was at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. She was there when the shots were fired. Dasha, bring us up to speed as to where things stand now, what we know about the whereabouts of the former president, and what happens from here.
Hallie, as reporters in this day and age, you and I both know we cover shootings. It is a modern day reality. It is very rare, though, and certainly has never happened to me, that we, instead of going to the scene in the aftermath, we are actually there on site and witnessing all of this. We were there, our team, in the moments when the shots rang out. I can walk you through just briefly to give you a sense of what it was like in the crowd there. There was a transition of emotions from chaos and fear and confusion to you will see and hear in that video that you've been playing, once the former president puts his fist up into the air, then cheers and trying to figure out what exactly happened. We are now in the parking lot outside of the venue. We've been here for hours. Earlier, we showed you a massive traffic jam. Thousands and thousands of cars were in this parking lot. Thousands of people at this rally coming to what they thought was going to be a typical Trump rally, a typical political rally. That's, of course, not what they experienced. We've been talking to witnesses here, sharing our own experience with them and hearing from them as well. I want you to take a listen to some of the conversations that I've had. Joe and Donna, a mother-son, who say that they were right there. They were in the area where this happened. Donna, let me start with you. First of all, are you okay?
Yes, I'm shook. I'm definitely shook up, but I'm okay. Yeah, and Trump was talking, watching him. I heard pop, pop, pop. I thought it was like a cap gun. And my son's like, gun, get down. And next thing you know, everybody around us was down. And then once we got down, we was up at the top of our bleacher. The men were yelling to all the snipers and all the cops to come over because he had shot a man and a woman in our bleacher. We heard the one is very fatal. We don't know that for sure, but they were down. They went out on.
So Joe, what exactly did you see? Because from our vantage point, we couldn't see what was going on. We didn't see any individuals. All we could do was listen for those sounds. But what did you see?
Again, I was watching the president and you hear the gunshots go off. Remarks from up top said that the shooter actually climbed up the back of the bleacher. And after we got down, like my mom said, there was 2 people down. They were calling for medics. We did see the 2 people that were shot and we saw them get carried out. Like, I don't know. The one didn't look like they were okay. I hope the other one's okay, and just may God watch over them tonight.
And Dawn, you said 2 people. Were these 2 people fellow attendees of the rally? And what kind of did you see them get shot directly, or did you just see the aftermath?
No, you just heard the noise. You heard the pop, 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 seeing the aftermath, and neither of them looked good. They were both down. Nobody was talking. Nobody was moving.
What was going through your mind as you were witnessing all of this?
Are they still here? And am I going to get shot? That's what's going through my mind. He's holding my hand, and we were going to get up and try to get out of here. And some gentleman there said, no, you stay down. So we stayed down. And then we finally heard everybody evacuate, and he grabbed my hand and we got out of there.
And Joe, what was your state of mind coming into this rally today? What were you expecting, and what are you feeling now as we all experienced a day that none of us thought would come?
Well, I was excited. I mean, this is our second rally, and the first one, Trump is very energetic when it comes to these, and well, now I want to vote for him more than ever.
Why is that?
Just to send a message to these people. They can't stop us.
Don't stop us. That's right.
Don, how are you feeling? I mean, you're here with your son. Of course, you want to protect your baby, and you don't want them or yourself to be in any danger. What were those mama instincts in that moment, and how are you feeling right now?
Exactly. My mama instincts were when he grabbed my hand, I knew my son was scared to death because he was holding my hand. He had held my hand since he was probably 5 or 6 years old. And so he held on to my hand, and you can imagine, my heart went into a million pieces. All I kept thinking was we got to be safe and get out of here. And I agree with Joe. Vote for Trump because this country got to get back in line. This is out of control.
How did you get out ultimately? How did you get here to safety?
Once they evacuated us, because right where we were sitting, we were able to just keep on going. We actually watched snipers and everybody over on the side for a few minutes, but we just got out of there. We were scared.
What did you see from your vantage point of the snipers? These were the people protecting the former president.
That's correct. And now they were over in the lawn. They were watching every single person with their guns going by. I believe the one injured person was over there that they had. Wasn't he on the one on the ground?
Yeah, so before they evacuated, they carried the 2 injured people out. Then they yelled for us to get evacuated. At that point, all the Secret Service were up in our section with the guns, and they were all in the field. Because like I said, rumor was he climbed up the back of our bleacher.
Hallie, I also spoke to a gentleman who was right next to the person who was shot and killed at this rally. He was an OBGYN, a doctor who said he actually helped to carry that man out of the venue, describing that harrowing scene to us. So many people witnessed this tragedy today and are trying to wrap their minds around what happened. The sun has set here, but the reality is still dawning on all of us that were in that rally, what we witnessed and what this is going to mean for the future of this country, for the future of this campaign, for the future of this election. We know the former president has posted on Truth Social that he's okay. He's been injured in his right ear. He did send condolences to the family of the person who was injured fatally. This is something that, of course, President Biden has spoken about as well. The two of them have spoken. And now we're just 48 hours from the Republican National Convention, a massive event and an event where security was already a concern. And now it remains to be seen just what this means for the protection around the former president, certainly to be escalated after this, Hallie.
Dasha Burns live for us there. Dasha, thank you so much. I want to go to our investigative correspondent, Tom Winter, who's with us. And Tom, you've got some new details on how this shooting took place. What can you tell us?
I can, Hallie, but first I think we should get to some additional information that myself and my colleagues have been learning, and including our colleagues Jonathan Deans and Dan DeLuce. The individual who is believed to have tried to shoot former President Trump is somebody who is not a foreign national. There's no nexus here, we've been told, to any sort of foreign national or foreign country. Separately, it's possible this person could be from the general western part of Pennsylvania, and we're in the process of hunting that down now, and obviously we'll continue to report and get as much detail as possible. As far as the location of where this alleged shooter was, we just saw the video, and it's an incredible video of the former president being taken from the stage, and you can see here now on the map, you call it 148 yards, 150, 130, but generally put, these are the two locations where these individuals were located. That's a manufacturing company on the left-hand side of your screen and a roof that belongs to that, at least according to a Google search. We haven't been able to reach that particular firm yet to confirm the details of that. And then you can see where the stage was set up today for the rally. Now, the Secret Service's perimeter is, of course, and you know this very well, Hallie, from your time on covering so many various campaigns, you can't bring in a weapon. You're going to be searched. There's magnetometers. There's people to check you. But it appears that this was outside, and we are told from the Secret Service this was outside of their area where they would have checked people. Now, there is video of snipers on a roof who appear to notice or fire at this individual, and we're in the process of confirming some of the details of that video before we we show it to you just to make sure. But if that video is accurate, it does show the counter sniper team. So these are Secret Service agents or part of federal law enforcement that are, their job is to try to look for somebody like this, identify them, and if need be, take that individual out. And it appears that that was part of what happened here today. But you can see how close this was to the stage, and you can see how well this happened. We had video moments ago, or earlier, I should say, that showed this rooftop. Here it is. The blurred object there is the body of the alleged shooter, who's believed to be there. It is a man. We've reported that previously, and the individual appears to be wearing some sort of a tan camouflage pant, Hallie, but it's difficult to make out a lot of details about them from what we've seen. So that's kind of the latest on this investigation, which is moving quickly. As we've reported, the FBI director has personally briefed the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and he's also talked to the National Security Council and the National Security Advisor about this investigation and plans to continue those updates, obviously, over the course of the next several hours and days.
Tom Winter, thank you. I know you're staying close to your phone and close to a camera. Appreciate that. I want to share some developing news now coming into us from the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who says right now that former President Trump has now left the Butler area. This is in a statement posted online on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying that he and his wife are thankful that Mr. Trump's team reports that he is fine, and we continue to wish him a full and speedy recovery. The Pennsylvania governor goes on to say that federal law enforcement officials will continue to lead, of course, on the investigation into the attempted shooting of former President Trump, this shooting, and Pennsylvania State Police will lead the investigation into the shooting of the other victims here in Butler, Pennsylvania. Obviously, the governor's indication that Mr. Trump has left the Butler area suggests that perhaps Mr. Trump is now on his way back to one of his homes. We've been talking here tonight to some folks who attended that rally today. I want to bring in one of them. John David Longo is the mayor of Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being with us.
I'm here.
Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay, can you tell us what you heard and what you saw at that rally?
Ma'am, can you hear me all right?
Sure can, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try one more time. Can you tell us what you saw at the rally, if you can hear me?
Of course. Thank you very much. Where to start? You know, the day started very early in the day. Everybody was full of smiles and elated to be there in support of President Trump. Lots of folks were reminiscing about his visit to us in Butler County in Halloween of 2020, and all of us were expecting that we were going to be able to enjoy another joyous occasion. You know, I had the pleasure of participating in the rally, and I even had the pleasure of chatting with the president 15, 20 minutes before this awful thing happened. And it was just such a sad thing to see. And I'm so sorry for the family and friends of the individual whose life was stolen from him because of this maniac's violence.
One of the things we talked about earlier, Mr. Mayor, this is an area of Pennsylvania that is, to so to speak, Trump country. The people who had attended, based on the reporting that we've done, were excited to be there. They were excited to hear from the former president on the eve of the Republican convention in Milwaukee, a key moment for his campaign and for his candidacy here. Can you share any insights into how your community is doing tonight?
My community's thoughts and prayers, first and foremost, are with the friends and family of the individual whose life was taken from him today. We are with him. We're grieving with that family, first and foremost. And second, we are in deep blood red Trump country here in northern Butler County in the Slippery Rock area. And our thoughts are with the president. But I got to tell you, man, you know, I saw a lot of ugly today, but I saw a lot of good today. I saw a lot of good come out of people on the ground during this time when folks were scared. People took the initiative and they stood up and they helped one another. And that is representative of everything that Butler County conservatives stand up for and believe in.
One of the images that we're seeing as you're speaking here, Mr. Mayor, is the former president delivering a couple of fist pumps, essentially, to the crowd after it was clear that he had been hurt. You could see blood on his face and he was being rushed off stage by Secret Service. As you were watching that, what went through your mind in that moment?
Yeah, well, my vantage point was incredible because I was sitting just to stage left, first row. I was just, 20 feet from the president. So I got to see all of that unfold as I was scanning around. And at first I felt relief, of course. I thought, thank God, President Trump is up and standing. And second, I thought, thank goodness that this wasn't even worse. I mean, the potential for this to be even worse than it was, as awful as it is, was just humongous. So it was a bit of relief, but also too, it was harrowing. You know, I was very scared for the future, and I thought, my goodness, what is it that we've gotten ourselves into, and what's next here?
Before I let you go, have you had any contact with any members of the Trump campaign since this happened? Have they reached out at all?
I haven't spoken with anybody officially on the ground level of the Trump campaign, but I will say that I've heard from plenty of people who are close to the campaign, plenty of Butler County Republican leaders here in the area, and once more, all of us are just thinking and praying for the family of the individual whose life was lost, and our thoughts and prayers, of course, with the president and with the entire nation right now.
A very difficult evening. John David Longo, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being with us here on this NBC News special report tonight. I appreciate it. I want to turn now to Garrett Haake, who covers former President Trump, who has been part of our coverage tonight. And Garrett, some new perhaps clues as to the former president's location, or at least the location that he has apparently departed, according to Governor Shapiro here. Talk us through it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we know right now where the former president is not, and that's in the Butler area where this rally was held. But beyond that, we don't have a lot more specific information about his location. And I suppose that's probably to be anticipated after an assassination attempt, as we now know that this is. But what we have right now is a situation where the Trump campaign is in something of a communications lockdown. They are not speaking with press. They are not speaking publicly really at all beyond that message from the former president on his social media platform, and a fundraising blast that just went out with no particular details, but it says only a message from President Trump, "I will never surrender." For all we know, that could have been a planned thing for the end of this rally tonight, regardless. So we're in right now the uncharted territory in which we've found ourselves so familiar this campaign season, with the former president out of the hospital, as far as we know, out of the Butler area, but not yet returned to his New Jersey golf club where we expected him to spend the night tonight, nor headed to Milwaukee, where we do still expect him to appear on Monday, according to the convention organizers and the Trump campaign, who said in a statement earlier this evening, essentially, that the show must go on. But Hallie, how different will that show be? How much will this moment, this attempted assassination of a presidential candidate, change the tenor, the direction, the issue set of this campaign? It's impossible to know right now, but I can tell you that the former president's allies on Capitol Hill are already moving very quickly to keep this incident in the spotlight. They've announced investigations that will come in the House, the Speaker putting out a statement to that effect, the chair of the Oversight Committee, which seems keen to claim jurisdiction here, inviting the head of the Secret Service to come and testify a week from Monday. So imagine all week next week, you'll have the Republican convention. Then the following Monday, you could very well see the head of the Secret Service answering questions about this in front of lawmakers on the Hill. That's just one chamber. I think we'll also see the Senate dive into this issue, too, to see what possible failures there could have been here by the Secret Service, what other steps could have been taken to prevent this incident tonight from coming as close as it appears to have of taking the life of a soon-to-be presidential nominee of a major party.
Garrett Haake, thank you. I want to turn now to our senior White House correspondent, Kelly O'Donnell. And Kelly, we know that former President Trump has spoken with President Biden tonight, based on what the White House is telling us. As the president himself, and I think we have a live look at his plane, is getting ready to change his plans. He's heading back to Washington earlier than expected, Kelly.
That's right. He had been in Rehoboth, Delaware, will be departing here shortly to come back to Washington. And the president will be able to, by virtue of being back, have additional briefings here in person tomorrow. Of course, the powers of the presidency go wherever he goes, and he was receiving briefings at his home in Delaware, but made a decision that he wanted to come back to the White House tonight. We expect him to return to Washington after midnight, sometime around 12:30 or so, based on the schedule as we understand it. You pointed out that he placed a call to former President Trump. They were able to connect after trying earlier, shortly after the incident. In the immediate aftermath of that, President Biden tried to reach him, was unable to do so. They spent a little more time. They were able to connect and have a personal connection. You heard the president earlier tonight speaking publicly, talking about the fact that there can be no political violence tolerated and that everyone must condemn it, and that former President Trump should have been able to carry out this rally without any threat, and that should not have happened. So President Biden trying to get additional information, we now know he has been briefed by an array of top government officials who will be responsible for various aspects of this investigation. Now, of course, there is a political environment here, and these two men are not only predecessor and successor, and both who have been commander-in-chief and in the Oval Office. They are, of course, running against each other in this heated political environment. The Biden campaign is telling its own staff and members to hold off from any commentary on what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania today, to not talk about this, to try to turn down any of the political rhetoric and to have a pause. We have seen this in the political landscape at different times when there are sad or unexpected events of a variety of types that campaigns will have a moment to pause. Everything from deaths in the family to hurricanes to other kinds of issues that command people's immediate attention. This is highly, highly rare and is very upsetting. And there are many questions to be answered and pursued in terms of the investigation. So turning down some of the rhetoric, turning down some of the political engagement that would typically happen. Now, what we don't know is how the president's schedule will be affected beyond tonight and tomorrow. He, of course, had a planned schedule that included some appearances publicly before and around the Republican National Convention, which is set to begin in Milwaukee. Sometimes candidates sit out their opponents' convention, but in the last couple of cycles, we've seen more intense and robust engagement, regardless of the other calendar and the other campaign's biggest event, the convention itself, the nominating convention. So many questions to find out in the next day or two about what the schedules will be. What we do know is the president will get more briefings tomorrow. He's heard from the FBI director, the head of the Secret Service, his top Homeland Security officials, both at the cabinet level and the internal White House advisor, and all of those expected experts in various fields interacting here. So there's a political component, there's an investigative one, and there is certainly just sort of the tone of the nation right now, where the president wants things to be about not accepting any kind of violence like this as he tries to get more answers.
Kelly O'Donnell standing by for us tonight at the White House. Kel, thank you. I want to bring in now Evie Pamporis, a former Secret Service agent. Evie, with your expertise, can you help us understand what's happening now inside that agency, inside the investigation, with the priority, presumably, of course, making sure that the former president gets to where he needs to go tonight?
So the first thing is, if we're looking at the investigative part, the FBI is the entity, the agency now that's going to come in and investigate what has happened. Now, this is done by design to keep the Secret Service out of the investigation, because if there is a security issue, a security flaw, a mistake, they don't want the Secret Service obviously investigating themselves. So the FBI comes in, and we received the reports. They came in immediately. They came to the site, secure it. They're starting to interview people. They're assessing who did what happened, and they're going to follow that investigation. As far as the suspect goes, or the individual that we believe took the shots, they're going to interview family members, friends, employers, employees, if he's a business owner, any mental health history. Were there any signs that this individual made threats in the past? So you're going to see a purge of social media accounts online. It's going to be subpoena after subpoena after subpoena to get as much information as possible to understand the why. Now, the bigger thing really is for something like this, and the priority is this a network of people? Obviously, since the last assassination attempt we had, that was Ronald Reagan. And after that, we had 9/11. So it's different. Typically, historically, it's always been the lone wolf, the jackal, they would call it, who's going to come in to do something like this. But after 9/11, we see a different threat of terrorism. So the one thing the FBI is really going to focus on, is there a network of people? Is this a terrorist attack? It does not seem that it is that. Again, there's nothing's been confirmed, but it appears that it does not seem to be that. And it's starting to lead itself to that lone individual, that person. Now, as far as the Secret Service, there's reports already coming out that the director, Kimberly Cheadle, will be testifying before Congress, and they're going to ask her what happened. Now, when we look at that aerial shot that you guys have been pulling up, right, that aerial shot, we have the hardened perimeter, which is the perimeter that the Secret Service secures. Okay, so what does that mean? That's the perimeter basically that is blocked off, where you have the magnetometers there, where you have the hardcore element. So anybody that comes into that area is typically screened. Beforehand, it's actually cleared out. Dogs come through, military personnel, they check for bombs or any explosives, and then you power it up with manpower, poststanders, police, military, special agents. They lock it down. Then you control who comes in. You keep the area clean. So people going through magnetometer checkpoints. So that's the hardened security perimeter. Now, what we're hearing is this individual who took the shot was outside that perimeter. Now, just because they're outside that perimeter, it does not mean that you don't secure that. You do have a secure element out that way. So one of the things, or there's multiple things you do, you have local police patrolling the area, right? You can have post standards or USSS personnel perhaps also patrolling the area with local police. Now, the counter sniper entities, and what we're hearing through reports is there are 2 snipers on a rooftop in an adjacent building. Now, what they do is they want a high position.
I just want to stop you there, as we are just looking here at President Biden and his team. That's not the president, of course, that's his motorcade pulling up to Air Force One. He is departing. You see him going up the steps of Air Force One now, the back of the president, heading back to the White House after this apparent assassination attempt on former President Trump at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. We're going to watch President Biden as he boards Air Force One again, leaving Delaware. He is returning here to Washington, turning around and giving a salute as he walks in to the plane. We are expecting a press conference in just about 15 minutes from now. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. We will take a very brief couple-second pause for more stations to join us right now. I'd like to welcome you back to this NBC News special report. I'm Hallie Jackson. We are on the air with breaking news. Earlier tonight, a shooting at Donald Trump's Pennsylvania campaign rally. The former president was injured in an assassination attempt. The Secret Service says the president is safe, that the suspected shooter is dead. We know that we have heard from Donald Trump, the former president, on his Truth Social online platform, posting he was hit with a bullet that he says pierced the upper part of his right ear. He said he felt it ripping through his skin. Here's what we know right now. The alleged gunman fired a weapon from a roof outside the perimeter of the rally. So he was outside that typical Secret Service security area. The alleged gunman is dead, as is a spectator who was attending the rally. That person has been killed. 2 others were badly hurt. President Biden, you just saw him boarding Air Force One moments ago. He is headed back to Washington now. He says he has spoken. The White House says that he has spoken with Mr. Trump. Earlier this evening, you had President Biden addressing the nation, condemning the violence. Former President Trump, in his statement, extended condolences to the loved ones of the spectator, the rally goer who was killed, and the others who were hurt. He also thanked law enforcement and first responders for their quick action. His campaign has also suggested he will be at the Milwaukee convention, the Republican convention, set to begin not long from now. I want to let folks know that in just about 15 minutes, we are expecting a news conference in Butler, Pennsylvania. And this may be where we get some answers to some of the key questions tonight. We expect federal law enforcement as well as local law enforcement to be there, presumably with a critical update on the investigation. We will bring that to you live the second that it happens. Before it does, I want to get to our colleague Kelly O'Donnell, our senior White House correspondent, who is at the White House. And Kelly, we saw President Biden boarding his plane. He is headed back here.
That is a change in his schedule, one brought out by these events where the president made a decision. We were told by sources familiar that he was at Mass earlier today when he learned of the incident involving the former president, made a decision that he wanted to speak publicly in the earliest point after he got some initial briefings, did that earlier tonight. Then as he gained more information, made the decision that he wants to leave Delaware to come back to the White House tonight. We expect he will get here sometime after midnight, likely around the 12:30 a.m. time, and that tomorrow it is expected he will have additional briefings with key law enforcement personnel from the Secret Service, the FBI, Homeland Security, and so forth. All the different threads of information that could give a better picture of what happened, who was involved, and what motivations may have been a part of this. He did have that personal connection with former President Trump by phone tonight after trying to reach him earlier at a time when we could presume that the former president was probably getting some medical care or just getting through the initial experience of this apparent assassination attempt and all of the turmoil associated with that. So they have now spoken and connected personally. We know additionally that the Biden campaign is saying to its own team, turn down the rhetoric, do not comment about this issue, put it on pause right now, and that the focus needs to be on bringing about calm, having some unity in the country, that we as a nation stand against political violence. Even though political violence has reared its head many times in our history, that now is a time with a heated campaign to try to turn down the rhetoric. So this could be a point where we could see some other changes in schedule. We simply don't know yet. These are fast moving events. We're tracking each of these developments. And as we learn more, we'll bring it to you. Hallie?
Kelly O'Donnell live for us there from the White House. Kelly, thank you very much. I want to bring in Pennsylvania Congressman Dan Muser, who was at today's rally. He is joining us now. Congressman, thank you very much for your time tonight. I know it's late and I know it's been a difficult day.
Yeah, well, good to be with you. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened, what you saw happen, what you saw and heard there today in Butler?
Sure. It started as a typical rally. We had some pre-rally speeches, myself, Senate candidate Dave McCormick, Mike Kelly, my colleague in the House,